The conference room stretched wide and tall, built to hold representatives from 47 different species. Captain Junho Kim walked through the massive doors with his team behind him. Ambassador Heejin Park moved beside him, her face calm and professional. Commander Daeho Choi followed close, his hand never far from his sidearm. The room fell silent as the humans entered. Yunyo felt dozens of eyes watching them. Some of those eyes belonged to creatures with scales. Others had feathers. A few glowed in colors humans had no names for. At the center of the curved table sat Counselor Thexvar, a tall being covered in blue and silver feathers. His species had ruled the council for 3 generations. The human delegation finally arrives, Thexvar said. His voice came through the translation device as cold and sharp. We have been waiting. Heejin stepped forward. We arrived exactly on time, Counselor. As agreed. Sit. Thexvar gestured to 3 chairs at the far end of the table. Not at the table itself, but at the end, like children called to explain themselves to adults. Junho exchanged a glance with Heejin. She gave a tiny nod. They sat. The war had lasted 8 months. The Krev Empire had attacked 3 human colonies without warning. They said humans had built settlements in space that belonged to them. They said humanity had no right to expand beyond the Sol system. They said many things, but the truth was simple. The Krev wanted what humans had built, and they thought humans would be easy to defeat. They were wrong. Humanity fought back hard. Every man, woman, and capable person joined the defense. Engineers became soldiers. Teachers learned to pilot defense fighters. Factory workers built weapons around the clock. When the Krev came expecting an easy victory, they found humans who refused to surrender. The battles were brutal. Humans lost 17,000 people, but the Krev lost 3 entire fleets. Their advance stopped. Their empire shook, and now the council had called everyone to this station to talk about peace. Junho had hope when they arrived. Maybe the council had finally seen that humans deserved respect. Maybe they understood that humanity could defend itself. Maybe this meeting would lead to real peace. That hope died quickly. Let us begin, Thexvar announced. The Krev Empire and humanity have been at war. This war has disrupted trade routes. It has made other species nervous. It has cost the Council time and resources to monitor. This cannot continue. High Chancellor Mordak of the Krev leaned forward. His scales were deep red and his eyes were yellow and cold. The humans started this war by refusing to leave Krev expansion zones. That's a lie, Daeho said, his voice hard. You attacked our colonies. We have proof, Commander. Heejin said quietly, putting a hand on his arm. She stood and activated her datapad. A hologram appeared above the table, showing attack records, civilian casualty reports, and intercepted Krev military orders. The evidence is clear. The Krev Empire attacked first. They targeted civilian populations. They destroyed medical facilities and schools. By any definition, they are the aggressors. The council members looked at the evidence. Some seemed uncomfortable. Others looked away. But Thexvar simply waved his hand and the hologram disappeared. Evidence can be interpreted many ways, he said. What matters is stability. The galaxy needs peace. We want peace, Heejin said. That's why we're here. Good. Thexvar opened a document. Then you will accept the council's terms. First, humanity will withdraw from all colonies established in the last 10 years. Second, you will pay reparations to the Krev Empire for the fleets you destroyed. Third, you will submit to council military oversight. A council force will be stationed in the Sol system to ensure compliance. The words hit like physical blows. Unyo felt his hands curl into fists. Around the table, other species nodded as if these terms made perfect sense. Heejin stood very still. Counselor, those terms are not peace. That is surrender. Call it what you wish, Thexvar replied. These are the terms that will bring stability. We defended ourselves, Junho said, standing now too. The Krev attacked us. They killed 17,000 of our people. And you want us to pay them? Your casualties, while regrettable, are acceptable losses for galactic stability, Thexvar said, as if discussing the weather. Humans are the newest species in council space. You must understand your place. The Krev are an established empire. These colonies you fight over have been in their expansion path for centuries. Expansion path? Daeho's voice rose. That's not a legal claim. Those were empty systems. We surveyed them. We followed every council regulation. We built homes there. And you can build homes elsewhere, Mordak said with a cruel smile. Back in your own system. Where you belong. Heejin's jaw tightened. She pulled up more data. According to Council law, any species may settle in unclaimed systems. We followed the law. The Krev ignored it. They are the ones who violated Council regulations. A few species representatives shifted uncomfortably. One, a being made mostly of crystalline structures, started to speak. Perhaps we should review. There is nothing to review. Thexavar cut him off. The Council has made its decision. Humanity must accept responsibility for this conflict. You are disrupting an order that has stood for thousands of years. By existing, Junio asked, his voice dangerously quiet. That's what this is about. You're angry that we fought back. You expected us to lose. We expected you to be reasonable, Thexavar said. Instead, you have been aggressive and difficult. These terms are generous considering your behavior. Generous? Heejin's calm finally cracked. You invited us here under the promise of peace negotiations. This isn't a negotiation. You've already decided everything. You're not asking for our input. You're demanding our surrender to an empire that tried to destroy us. And the alternative? Mordek asked. You are one species alone. The Council has 47 members. The Krev Empire has thousands of ships. What will you do? Fight everyone? Silence fell over the room. It was a threat barely disguised. Submit or be destroyed. Junho looked at Heejin. She looked at Daiho. Something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. They had come here hoping for justice, for fairness, for acknowledgement that humanity had a right to exist and grow among the stars. Instead, they found only arrogance. The Council didn't see them as equals. They saw humans as a problem to be managed, as children to be controlled, as inferiors who should be grateful for any scraps of tolerance the advanced species offered. Junho felt the anger in his chest transform into something colder, clearer. He stood up straight and looked directly at Thexavar. You invited us here, not for peace, he said, but for our surrender. Heejin closed her datapad. The sound of it clicking shut seemed impossibly loud in the huge chamber. She picked up her documents, organized them neatly, and placed them in her case. Then she looked at Thexavar with an expression of perfect, cold calm. We're done here. She turned and walked toward the door. Junho and Daiho followed immediately. Behind them, the Council chamber erupted in confused voices. Some aliens shouted for them to stop. Others demanded they return. Thexavar's voice rose above them all. You cannot simply leave. This is the Galactic Council. You will return and accept our terms. Heejin stopped at the door. She didn't turn around. No, Counselor. We won't. Then the human delegation walked out. The doors closed behind them with a heavy, final sound. In the chamber, Thexavar stared at the closed doors in shock. In all his years on the Council, no species had ever simply walked away from negotiations. It was unthinkable, rude, barbaric. They'll be back, Mordak said, though he sounded less certain than before. They have no choice. Thexavar nodded slowly, but something cold had settled in his stomach. Something that felt almost like fear. He pushed the feeling away. Humans were nothing. Weak. Young. They would crawl back begging within weeks. They had to. Outside the station, the human ship detached from the docking port and turned toward home. Inside, Heejin sat in her quarters and began writing reports. There was much to do now. So very much to do. The peace talks were over. Something else was about to begin. The message went out from Earth 3 days after the failed peace talks. It was short and clear. Every human ambassador in Council space received the same order. Come home. No exceptions. No delays. Ambassador Heejin Park stood in the command center deep under Seoul, watching the screens as responses came in. One by one, human representatives across 50 worlds began packing their things. They closed embassies. They deleted files. They boarded ships and left. The Council is sending messages, an aide said, handing Heejin a datapad. They're demanding explanations. They want us to reconsider. Ignore them, Heejin said simply. Beside her, Captain Junho Kim nodded. Good, let them wait. Let them wonder. Across the galaxy on the frontier colony of New Busan, Governor Taejin Yoon stood on a balcony overlooking his city. Below him, 50,000 people lived and worked. They had built this place from nothing. They had carved farms from rocky soil. They had constructed homes and schools and hospitals. It was theirs, and the Council wanted them to abandon it. Not a chance, Taejin said quietly. His assistant, a young woman named Minji, stood beside him. The Council observers are demanding a meeting, sir. They say they need to discuss the situation. Tell them to leave, Tajin said. They have 24 hours to get off my world. After that, they'll be arrested. Sir? Minji's eyes widened. You heard me. This is human territory. They're not welcome anymore. The same scene played out on every human colony. Council observers, the aliens who had been sent to monitor human activities, suddenly found themselves unwanted. Some left quickly, sensing the change in mood. Others protested, claiming they had rights and diplomatic immunity. They were escorted to ships anyway, politely but firmly. In the orbital shipyards above Mars, Admiral Minho Kang walked through corridors filled with activity. Workers moved in organized chaos, building ships faster than ever before. The admiral was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had fought in every major conflict humanity had known. He understood war. Status report, he said to the engineer walking beside him. All construction is ahead of schedule, Admiral, the engineer replied. We've converted 70% of civilian facilities to military production. The new destroyers will be ready in 3 months. Not fast enough, Minho said. I want them in 2 months. Admiral, we're already pushing the workers to their limits, then push harder. The Council thinks we're weak. The Krev think they can destroy us. We need to be ready for anything. The engineer nodded, understanding the unspoken message. Peace had failed. War might come again, bigger and more terrible than before. Minho continued his inspection, checking every ship, every weapon system, every detail. He had activated Protocol Fortress the day Hyejin returned from the failed talks. It was a plan humanity had hoped never to use. It meant total mobilization. Every resource, every factory, every brilliant mind focused on one goal: survival. In a research facility beneath the Australian outback, Dr. Sora Lee studied holographic displays showing weapon designs. She was young for a chief scientist, only 32, but her mind was extraordinary. The Council had always restricted what humanity could research. They said certain technologies were too dangerous for newer species. They said humans weren't ready. Sora didn't care what they said anymore. Run the simulation again, she told her team. Increase the plasma containment by 15%. The hologram showed a weapon that could punch through any known shield in Council space. It was based on principles the Council had forbidden humans from studying. But there were no Council observers anymore. No restrictions. No rules except the ones humans made for themselves. The simulation completed. The weapon worked perfectly. Begin production, Sora said. I want 50 units within the month. Her assistant hesitated. Dr. Lee, if the Council finds out, they won't, Sora said calmly. And even if they do, what will they do about it? Invade Earth? They can try. Back on Earth, trade officials were busy redirecting supply lines. Humanity had been trading with dozens of Council worlds. Human medical technology had saved millions of alien lives. Human agricultural techniques had fed billions. Human mining innovations had made rare materials affordable. All of that stopped. Trade Minister Sunwoo Bei sat in his office reviewing contracts. He was canceling every single one. The Velnar worlds are offering triple payment for our medical shipments, his assistant said. They're desperate, sir. There's a plague spreading on their core worlds. Inform them that all contracts are suspended, Sunwoo said without looking up. But sir, people are dying. And whose fault is that? Sunwoo's voice was cold. Their council sat there and insulted us. They demanded we surrender to an empire that tried to destroy us. They called our dead acceptable losses. Now they want our help? He shook his head. No. Let them solve their own problems. The assistant left quietly. Sunwoo returned to his work feeling no guilt. Humanity had always been generous with its knowledge and resources. But generosity required respect. The Council had shown none. The Council began to notice the changes after 2 weeks. Their messages to human worlds went unanswered. Trade shipments stopped arriving. Human merchants disappeared from Council stations. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. Councillor Thexvar called an emergency session. This is unacceptable, he declared to the assembled representatives. The humans are behaving like spoiled children. They must be brought back to the negotiating table. How? Asked one representative, a jellyfish-like being floating in a containment sphere. They won't answer our messages. Send a fleet, suggested Mordak, the Krev Chancellor. Show them they cannot simply ignore the Council. And risk another war? Another representative objected. We've already seen what happens when we fight humans. The Krev lost 3 fleets. Because they were unprepared, Mordak hissed. A proper council force would what? Thexvar interrupted. Destroy Earth? Bomb their colonies? We called them here for peace, not to start a new war. But privately, Thexvar was worried. He had expected the humans to be angry. He had expected protests and complaints. He had not expected this complete withdrawal. It was unprecedented. Concerning. More concerning was what his intelligence officers were reporting. Human space had gone completely dark. No ships entered or left. No communications could penetrate their borders. It was as if humanity had pulled a curtain closed and locked the door. What are they doing in there? Thexvar wondered aloud. His intelligence chief, a 4-armed being named Krell, looked uncomfortable. We don't know, Counselor. All our monitoring stations near human space have been politely but firmly shut down. We're completely blind. Blind? Thexvar's feathers ruffled in agitation. That's impossible. We have sensor networks throughout the galaxy. Not in human space anymore, sir. They've blocked everything. On New Busan, Governor Taejin Yoon received news that made his blood run cold. Krev scouts had been spotted near the system. The Empire was testing humanity's defenses, looking for weakness. How long until they attack? He asked his military advisor. Could be days. Could be weeks. But they're coming, sir. The question is whether we can hold them off. Taejin looked out at his city again. 50,000 people, families, children, all depending on him to keep them safe. And he had no fleet to defend them. No reinforcements coming. The nearest human military base was 6 weeks away. Send a message to Admiral Minho, Taejin said. Tell him we need help. But help seemed impossible. Even if ships left immediately, they wouldn't arrive in time. New Busan would have to face the Krev alone. Taejin activated the colony's defense systems. They were basic, designed to fend off pirates, not military fleets. But they were all he had. Evacuate all civilians to the underground shelters, he ordered. Get everyone inside within 48 hours. And arm every person who knows how to hold a weapon. If the Krev want this world, they'll have to take it from us. Back on Earth in the command center, Hyejin Park received Taejin's message. She read it twice, her face showing no emotion. Then she looked at Junho. The Krev are moving against New Busan, she said. I know, Junho replied. Minho already has ships en route. They'll get there in time. Will they be enough? Unyo smiled, and it was not a kind smile. The Krev are about to learn something important. They're about to see what happens when humans fight without council restrictions holding us back. Hyejin nodded slowly. She understood. For years, humanity had played by council rules. They had limited their weapons development. They had held back their military capabilities. They had been good galactic citizens, but the council had made it clear that being good citizens meant nothing. Humans were viewed as inferiors no matter what they did, so why keep playing by their rules? Let them come, Hyejin said quietly. Let the council see what we really are when we stop pretending to be what they want us to be. Across human space, the preparations continued. Factories ran day and night. Scientists worked on projects that would have been forbidden weeks ago. Soldiers trained with new weapons and new tactics. And at the borders of human territory, the silence continued. The galaxy watched and wondered what humanity was planning. But no answers came from the dark. Inside that darkness, humanity was transforming. Not into monsters or conquerors, but into something the Council had never expected them to be. Independent, strong, unafraid. The Krev fleet arrived at New Busan 4 months after humanity walked out of the peace talks. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They moved in perfect formation, confident and powerful. High Chancellor Mordak commanded the fleet from his flagship, a massive vessel called the Dominant Claw. He watched the planet on his view screen and felt satisfaction. The humans would pay for their disrespect. This colony would be the first to fall. Then others would follow until humanity begged for mercy. Scan the system, Mordak ordered. Show me their defenses. His sensor officer worked quickly. Chancellor, I'm detecting minimal defenses. Some orbital platforms. A few patrol ships. Nothing that can stop us. Excellent. Mordak's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Open a channel to the planet. On New Busan's surface, Governor Taejin Yoon stood in the command center deep underground. Around him, officers monitored stations, tracking the Krev fleet's every movement. The underground shelter held all 50,000 colonists. They were scared but determined. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said. "Put it through," Taijin ordered. Mordak's face appeared on the screen. "Human governor, you see my fleet? You have no chance of victory. Surrender now and I will be merciful. Your people may leave with their lives. Resist and I will turn your world to ash." Taijin stood straight and looked directly at the Krev Chancellor. "This is our home. We will not surrender it." "Then you will die defending it," Mordak cut the transmission. The Krev fleet began moving toward the planet. Their weapons powered up. Their shields activated. 200 ships against one small colony. It should have been over in hours, then the sensors started screaming. "Chancellor!" The sensor officer's voice pitched high in alarm. "New contacts. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL." "How many?" Mordak demanded. 30. No, 50. Chancellor, 80 ships and still counting. They're human vessels. Mordak stared at the tactical display. Human ships were appearing all around his fleet. But these weren't the ships he remembered from previous battles. These were different, sleeker, stranger. Their energy signatures were all wrong. Commander Jiwan Han stood on the bridge of the carrier Indomitable. She was young for a fleet commander, only 35, but she had earned her position through skill and courage. Behind her ship, 79 other vessels held formation. "All ships," Jiwan spoke calmly into the fleet channel. "Weapons free. Target the Krev fleet. Show them what happens when they threaten our people." The human fleet opened fire. The Krev had expected lasers and missiles, the standard weapons of council warfare. Instead, they faced something entirely new. Railguns fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. Plasma torpedoes burned through shields like they weren't there. Cyber warfare packages invaded Krev computer systems and turned their own weapons against them. Dr. Sora Lee's forbidden research had paid off spectacularly. The first Krev ship died within seconds, its hull torn apart by railgun fire. The second exploded when a plasma torpedo hit its reactor. The third lost control when its computers were hacked and crashed into the fourth. Evasive maneuvers. Mordak screamed, "Return fire!" The Krev fleet tried to respond, but they were fighting blind. Their tactics assumed Council standard weapons with Council standard limitations. The humans weren't playing by those rules anymore. Jiwan watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. Focus fire on their command ships. Take out their coordination. The human fleet moved like a single organism. Their artificial intelligence systems coordinated attacks faster than any organic crew could manage. They predicted Krev movements and countered them before the enemy could react. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. On the dominant claw, alarms blared from every station. Mordak watched ship after ship disappear from his tactical display. In 20 minutes, he had lost 30 vessels. In an hour, the number reached 80. His mighty fleet was being torn apart. "We need to retreat," his tactical officer shouted. "No!" Mordak's pride wouldn't allow it. "We outnumber them more than 2 to 1. "Keep fighting!" But numbers didn't matter when technology was so mismatched. The Krev ships were like warriors with swords facing enemies with machine guns. Brave, perhaps, but doomed. On New Busan, the colonists watched the battle through long-range sensors. They cheered every time a Krev ship fell. Children who had been crying in fear now laughed with relief. Parents who had prepared to die now dared to hope. Governor Taijin felt tears in his eyes. "They came," he whispered. "Our people came for us." In orbit, Captain Donghyun-oh led his Marines on a boarding action. Their target was a Krev destroyer that had been disabled by railgun fire. The Marines wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any Krev soldier. Their weapons fired smart bullets that could turn corners and track targets. "Secure the ship," Donghyun ordered. "Take prisoners if possible, but protect yourselves first." The Marines moved through the Krev ship like ghosts. The enemy never stood a chance. Within an hour, the destroyer was captured, its crew locked in their own brig. Back in the main battle, Jiwan checked the tactical display. 6 hours had passed since the fighting started. The Krev fleet was destroyed. Only 50 ships remained from the original 200. They were fleeing now, trying desperately to reach FTL distance, and should we pursue? Her tactical officer asked. "Let them go," Jiwan said, "but transmit everything. I want every ship recording this battle and broadcasting it on all channels. The galaxy needs to see what happened here." The surviving Krev ships jumped to FTL, carrying their tale of horror back to their empire. Mordak's flagship was among them, limping away with half its systems destroyed. In the council chambers on Station Theta 7, Counselor Thexvar watched the battle recordings with growing dread. Other council members sat in stunned silence. They had expected the Krev to crush the human colony. Instead, they had watched the Krev fleet get destroyed. How is this possible? Someone asked. Where did these weapons come from? They built them, Thexvar said quietly. Without our restrictions. Without our oversight. They built weapons we didn't even know were possible. But that's illegal, another counselor protested. They agreed to follow our technology restrictions. Did they? Thexvar pulled up the treaty documents. His eyes scanned the text looking for the relevant clauses. Then he stopped, his blood running cold. No, they didn't. We assumed they would follow council standards. We assumed our monitoring would be enough. But there's no actual binding agreement. We never thought to create one because we never imagined they would develop beyond our expectations. What are you saying? Mordak, who had returned to his council seat despite his defeat, demanded. I'm saying we made a mistake, Thexvar said. A terrible mistake. We thought humans were dependent on council technology. We thought they needed us. But they never did. They were working within our rules because they chose to. Not because they had to. And when we pushed them too far, they stopped choosing to follow those rules. More reports flooded in over the following days. Other human colonies were being attacked by various species seeking to take advantage of humanity's isolation. Every attack failed. Every aggressor limped away with their fleets in ruins. On Earth, Admiral Minho Kang coordinated the defense of human space from his command center. He moved ships like chess pieces, always one step ahead of the enemy. Any species that tried to invade human territory found themselves facing overwhelming force. But humans didn't push beyond their borders. They didn't seek revenge or conquest. They simply defended what was theirs and made it clear that any aggression would be met with devastating response. The galaxy began to understand. Humanity wasn't weak. They had been restrained. There was a difference, and it was a difference that would reshape galactic politics. Dr. Sora Lee sat in her laboratory, watching news reports from across the galaxy. Species that had mocked humanity now spoke of them with fear. Empires that had threatened them now avoided human space entirely. The Council, which had demanded surrender, now sent message after message begging for renewed dialogue. Are we going to respond? Her assistant asked. No, Sora said. Not yet. Let them wait. Let them worry. Let them understand what they lost when they insulted us. In the council chambers, Thexvar faced angry representatives from a dozen species. Trade had collapsed. Medical supplies were unavailable. Agricultural technology that had fed billions was gone. The economic damage was catastrophic. This is your fault. A crystal being shouted at Thexvar. You pushed them too hard. You demanded too much. We all agreed to those terms. Thexvar replied weakly. Because you told us the humans would accept them. You said they were weak. You said they needed us. The accusations flew like weapons. Thexvar had no defense. He had been wrong about humanity. Completely, catastrophically wrong. He had seen their kindness and assumed it meant weakness. He had seen their cooperation and assumed it meant dependence. He had seen their respect for council rules and assumed they had no choice. All wrong. The most disturbing reports came from exploration teams. Human ships were pushing into uncharted space at incredible speeds. They were claiming systems, establishing colonies and expanding their territory faster than any species in recorded history. They weren't asking council permission. 6 months had passed since humanity walked away from the council's peace talks. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The council's economy was collapsing. Counselor Thexvar stood in the emergency session hall, watching representatives argue and shout at each other. The unity that had held the council together for centuries was cracking. Species blamed each other for the disaster. Everyone wanted to know who would fix the crisis. No one had answers. Order. Thexvar tried to restore calm, but his voice lacked authority now. Everyone knew he had caused this mess. We must focus on solutions. Solutions? A reptilian delegate stood, her scales flushed with anger. The solution was to not insult the humans in the first place. But you did, and now we're all paying the price. The chamber erupted in agreement. Thexvar felt his political power slipping away with each passing moment. The numbers told a grim story. Humanity had provided 30% of the galaxy's advanced medical technology. Human pharmaceutical companies had developed cures for diseases that killed millions each year, Human agricultural innovations had increased crop yields across hundreds of worlds. Human mining techniques had made rare materials affordable and accessible. All of that was gone now. On the world of Velnar Prime, a plague was spreading through the major cities. The disease attacked the respiratory system, and victims drowned in their own fluids. Before humanity's isolation, this would have been a minor crisis. Human medical teams would arrive within days with a cure, but now there were no human doctors coming, no human medicines arriving. The Velnar people died by the thousands while their government begged for help that never came. Trade Minister Sun Wu Bei received the Velnar government's latest plea in his office on Earth. He read it carefully, noting the desperate tone, the offers of payment that grew larger with each message. Then he filed it away with hundreds of similar requests and moved on to his next task. "Sir," his assistant said carefully, "the death toll on Velnar Prime has reached 50,000. Their government is offering us anything we want. Technology, resources, even territory." "Noted," Sun Wu said without looking up. "But sir, people are dying." Sun Wu finally raised his eyes. They were cold and hard. "People died when the Krev attacked our colonies. 17,000 humans. Did the Velnar government stand up for us in the council? Did they object when Thexavar called our dead acceptable losses? No, they sat silent. They nodded along. They agreed that we should pay reparations to our attackers." He returned to his work. Now they can solve their own problems. The assistant left without another word. Sun Wu felt no guilt. Humanity had learned a hard lesson. Compassion without respect was just weakness in disguise. The Krev Empire was fracturing. After their devastating losses against human forces, their subject species saw opportunity. Rebellions broke out on a dozen worlds. The Krev military, once feared throughout the galaxy, was revealed to be hollow. They had grown lazy, assuming their size and reputation would always be enough. Against humans who didn't care about reputation, size meant nothing. Mordek sat in his throne room, receiving reports of one disaster after another. Entire sectors were in rebellion. His fleet was scattered and demoralized. And worst of all, human ships were claiming former Krev territory at will, offering protection to species who wanted freedom from the Empire. "They're stealing our space," Mordek raged. "We must stop them." His military advisor looked tired. "With what fleet, Chancellor? We lost nearly 1,000 ships in the last 6 months. Our shipyards can't replace them fast enough. And even if we had the ships, our crews are terrified of engaging human forces." "Cowards." Mordek slammed his fist on the armrest. "All of them." But it wasn't cowardice. It was reality. The Krev had attacked what they thought was easy prey, and found themselves facing predators. Now the Empire was paying the price. In the council chambers, 4 species had begun secret negotiations with humanity. They were careful to hide these talks from other council members, but whispers spread anyway. The Senari Collective, the Broken Rings Fellowship, the Helian Commonwealth, the Crystal Chorus, all of them reaching out to humans, seeking separate peace deals. Ambassador Hyejin Park sat across from the Senari ambassador in a private meeting room on Earth. The Senari were insectoid beings with complex eyes and delicate antennae. They had always been kind to humanity, even when other species looked down on them. "We wish to apologize," the Senari ambassador said, her voice translated by the device. "We should have spoken up for you at the peace talks. We were wrong to remain silent." "Yes," Hyejin said simply. "You were. We hope to establish formal relations between our peoples. Trade, cultural exchange, mutual defense, anything you wish." Hyejin studied the ambassador carefully. "Why now? Why not 6 months ago when we needed support?" The Senari's antennae drooped. "Fear, the council has power. We were afraid of standing alone against them. And now we see that the council's power was always an illusion. They were strong because species like humanity cooperated. Without that cooperation, they're nothing but talk and empty threats." Hyejin nodded slowly. "We'll consider your offer. But understand, we don't forget who stood with us and who didn't. Rebuilding trust takes time." Similar conversations happened with the other 3 species. Each wanted humanity's friendship now that humanity had proven its strength. Hyejin made no firm commitments but kept the channels open. It was important that the council see their unity breaking apart. Back in the council chamber, Thexvar faced the political end of his career. A vote of no confidence was scheduled for the next day. He would lose. Everyone knew it. His own allies had abandoned him not out of cruelty but out of survival instinct. They needed to distance themselves from his failures. The humans will return eventually, Thexvar told his remaining supporters. They need the Council as much as we need them. But even as he said the words, he knew they were false. The intelligence reports made that clear. Humanity was thriving in isolation. Their economy was growing. Their military was stronger than ever. They had formed new alliances with independent worlds, creating a trade network that rivaled the Council's. They didn't need the Council at all. The most damaging reports came from exploration divisions. Human ships had discovered 17 habitable worlds in uncharted space. They were colonizing them at an incredible pace. What took other species decades to accomplish, humans did in months. Their technology, freed from Council restrictions, had advanced dramatically. How? Thexvar demanded when he read the reports. How are they advancing so quickly? His science advisor, a being whose species had served the Council for generations, looked uncomfortable. Counselor, I think we've had it backwards. We assumed that our restrictions protected younger species from dangerous technology, but perhaps those restrictions simply held them back. Humans aren't advancing quickly. They're advancing at a normal pace. We've just never seen a species develop without our interference before. The thought was terrifying. It meant the Council had been stifling progress across the galaxy for centuries, all while believing they were helping. It meant every species could have been more advanced, more capable, if only the Council had stepped back and let them grow. Thexvar felt the weight of that revelation crushing down on him. Centuries of Council policy built on a false assumption, and humanity had exposed that lie simply by refusing to play along anymore. The economic crisis deepened. Without human agricultural technology, food shortages spread across Council worlds. Without human mining innovations, rare materials became scarce and expensive. Without human medical supplies, preventable diseases claimed millions of lives. The public opinion on Council worlds turned sharply against the government. Protests erupted on dozens of planets. People held signs demanding the Council apologize to humanity. They shouted slogans calling for Thexvar's removal. They asked the question that politicians couldn't answer. Why did we make enemies of the humans? In the streets of the Council's capital world, a demonstration turned into a riot. The crowd, made up of multiple species, marched on government buildings demanding change. Security forces tried to disperse them but failed. The anger was too great, too widespread. Thexvar watched the riots on his office screen and knew his time was over. The vote of no confidence would pass tomorrow. He would be removed from power and replaced by someone who might be able to repair relations with humanity, if humanity was interested in repairing anything. On Earth, Ambassador Hyjin Park reviewed the latest reports from Council space. She saw the economic collapse, the political chaos, the social unrest. She saw species suffering because their leaders had made poor choices. Part of her felt sympathy, but a larger part remembered sitting in that Council chamber, listening to Thexvar call human lives acceptable losses. They're requesting renewed negotiations, Captain Junho Kim said, entering her office. 5th request this month. I know, Hyejin replied. Should we respond? Not yet. They need to understand that peace talks are a privilege, not a right. They need to understand that we don't need them. Junho nodded. How long do we wait? Until they're ready to negotiate as equals. Until they understand that we won't accept anything less than full respect and autonomy. Hyejin looked at the view screen showing Earth below. 1 year after humanity walked out of the peace talks, Ambassador Hyejin Park stood at the window of Humanity Station, looking out at Earth. The station orbited above the Pacific Ocean, a symbol of human achievement built entirely without Council assistance. Ships came and went constantly, carrying goods and people to dozens of new colonies. Behind her, the conference room was being prepared for guests. Not just any guests. The Galactic Council was coming here, to Humanity's station, on humanity's terms. They're arriving, Captain Junho Kim announced, entering the room. He wore his dress uniform, every medal earned in battle displayed proudly. 15 Council representatives, including the new speaker, Velmara. Good, Hyejin said. She turned from the window, her expression calm and controlled. Let them see what we've built without them. The Council delegation arrived through the main docking port. Velmara led the group, her insectoid features difficult to read but her body language showing deference. Behind her came representatives from dozens of species. all watching the human station with wide eyes. The station was beautiful. Clean lines and efficient design merged with artistic touches that showed human creativity. The corridors were wide and well lit. Gardens filled with earth plants provided oxygen and beauty. Everywhere the council delegates looked, they saw technology that matched or exceeded anything in council space. "Welcome to Humanity Station," Hyejin said, greeting them in the main conference room. "Please sit." The room was circular with a round table at its center. Every seat was equal. There was no head of the table, no position of power. It was deliberate design, and the council delegates understood the message. Velmara took a seat across from Hyejin. The other delegates found their places. Then at the doorway another figure appeared. Former Councillor Thexvar, no longer wearing the robes of office. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Velmara began. Her translator rendered her voice as clear and respectful. "I know we have much to discuss." "Yes," Hyejin said simply. Velmara shifted in her seat. "I will begin with what should have been said a year ago. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I apologize. We failed to recognize your sovereignty and your capability. We treated you as inferiors when you deserved to be treated as equals. We dismissed your concerns and your losses. We made demands when we should have offered partnership. For all of this, we are deeply sorry." The words hung in the air. Several delegates looked uncomfortable. Apologizing was not something the council did often. Their entire structure was built on the assumption that they knew best, that older species had wisdom to share with younger ones. Admitting error challenged that foundation. Hyejin looked at each delegate in turn. Then her eyes settled on Thexvar standing near the back. "Former councillor, you have something to say?" Thexvar stepped forward. His feathers, once bright and proud, looked dull now. "Ambassador Park, I was the one who led the council delegation at the previous peace talks. I made the decisions that led to this crisis. I must formally state my mistakes." He pulled out a prepared document and began to read. "I treated humanity as supplicants rather than equals. I assumed your cooperation meant dependence. I saw your kindness as weakness. I called your debt acceptable losses. I demanded your surrender instead of offering genuine peace. Every choice I made was wrong, and the galaxy has paid the price for my arrogance." The room was silent. Yunyo stood beside Hyejin, his face impassive. Admiral Minho Kang sat at the table, watching with cold eyes. Commander Daeho Choi leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Finally, Hyejin spoke. "Thank you for that acknowledgement. But apologies are just words. What matters is what comes next." "Agreed," Velmara said. "We have drafted a new treaty, one that we hope addresses your concerns." She activated a holographic display that showed the treaty terms. "First, all previous demands are withdrawn completely. The colonies you have established are recognized as legitimate human territory. Second, the Council will not seek reparations for any conflicts that occurred during the past year. Third, humanity will be granted a full Council seat with veto power over any decisions that affect your interests." Junho raised an eyebrow. "Veto power? That's unprecedented." "Yes," Velmara agreed, "but these are unprecedented circumstances. We cannot risk making the same mistakes again. You must have the power to protect your interests." Hyejin read through the treaty carefully. "What about restrictions on our technology development?" "Removed entirely," Velmara said. "You are free to research and develop any technology you choose. We recognize that our restrictions serve no purpose except to limit your growth." "And military oversight?" "None. Your military is your own concern. We will not station forces in your space or monitor your defenses." The terms were good, better than Hyejin had expected. But she knew better than to accept too quickly. "And trade? We hope to restore trade relations, but we understand that will depend on trust being rebuilt. We're proposing that trade agreements be negotiated individually with each species, rather than through the Council as a whole. That way you can choose your partners." Hyejin exchanged glances with Junho and Minho. They both gave small nods. This was close to what they had discussed. But there was one more thing. What about the Krev Empire? The room tensed. Velmara's antennae moved in what might have been discomfort. The Krev Empire has collapsed. Mordek no longer holds power. Their subject species have gained independence, many with your assistance. The Krev themselves are contained to their core worlds and pose no threat. And if they become a threat again, then we will support whatever response you deem necessary. The Council will not defend them or interfere with your security decisions. Hyejin sat back in her chair. We need time to review this treaty in detail. We won't make a decision today. Of course, Velmara said. Take all the time you need. However, Hyejin continued, I can tell you that this is a significant improvement over your previous position. You're showing respect and offering genuine equality. That matters. Relief showed on several delegates' faces. They had feared humanity would reject them entirely, would stay isolated forever. The fact that Hyejin was even considering the treaty was progress. During the break, Thexvar approached Hyejin privately. She was standing by a window looking out at Earth again. He stopped a respectful distance away. Ambassador, he said quietly. She turned to face him. Former counselor, I wanted to apologize personally, not as a political gesture, but as one being to another. I was wrong about your species. I was wrong about you. And my mistakes cost lives on both sides. Hyejin studied him for a long moment. Do you understand what you did wrong? I think so, Thexvar said. I saw the galaxy through the lens of the Council's power structure. In that view, older species guide younger ones. We assumed we knew better simply because we had been traveling the stars longer. But age doesn't equal wisdom. Experience doesn't equal understanding. I should have listened to you. I should have seen you as you were, not as I assumed you to be. Yes, Hyejin said. You should have. Will humanity forgive us? Hyejin considered the question. Forgiveness isn't something I can grant on behalf of all humanity. But I can tell you this, we don't seek revenge. We don't want to dominate the galaxy or punish those who wronged us. We just want to exist in peace, to grow and explore and build our future. If the Council can accept us as true equals, then yes, we can move forward. Thank you, Thexvar said. That's more grace than I deserve. Perhaps, Hyejin replied. But grace isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to be better than our worst impulses. Later, the delegates reconvened. Velmara asked about other human concerns. Junyo raised the issue of the 4 species who had negotiated separately with humanity. We've established good relations with the Cenari Collective, the Broken Rings Fellowship, the Helion Commonwealth, and the Crystal Chorus. Those relationships will continue regardless of our status with the Council. We understand, Velmara said. Those species showed wisdom in reaching out to you. We hope others will follow their example. Admiral Minho raised another point. What about Council military doctrine? Your tactics are outdated. If you're expecting humanity to participate in mutual defense, we need to know that Allied forces can actually defend themselves. Several Council delegates looked offended, but Velmara cut off their protests. The Admiral is correct. Our recent conflicts have shown that our military had grown complacent. We would welcome human input on military training and tactics. The discussions continued for hours. Every detail was examined, every concern addressed. By the end of the day, a framework for the new relationship had emerged. It wasn't perfect, but it was built on mutual respect rather than assumed hierarchy. As the Council delegation prepared to leave, Velmara spoke to Hyejin one last time. There's a question I must ask, Ambassador. One that keeps me awake at night. Will humanity seek vengeance for how you were treated? Hyejin looked at her calmly. No, but you'll never underestimate us again. Never, Velmara agreed. That lesson has been learned at great cost. The signing ceremony happened 3 weeks later. Representatives from humanity and the Council gathered once more at Humanity Station. This time the mood was different. Hopeful instead of tense, collaborative instead of adversarial.